If I could go back and hand myself just one document before I started any of this, before my first side hustle, my first attempt at building something online, I wouldn't give myself a strategy. I would give myself a more accurate picture of what the terrain actually looks like. Because most of what held me back wasn't lack of information. There's no shortage of that, right? It was a set of specific misunderstandings about how this actually works. Things that seem obvious in hindsight and genuinely weren't at the time. So that's what this is. 5 things. Not a checklist or a motivational framework, just stuff I wish someone had said plainly. The first result you get from anything online is almost always an outlier, and it will mislead you in one of 2 directions. Either it's better than average, maybe it's a lucky early win, maybe it's a piece of content that accidentally lands a first sale, and you build an expectation that next 6 months will completely fail to meet. Or it's worse than average and nothing happens, just silence. And you conclude the thing doesn't work when really you have just seen one data point. So the first result, that's noise. The signal doesn't start until you have enough data points to see a pattern. And in most online businesses, that's somewhere between 50 and 100 attempts at something. So maybe 50 YouTube videos, 50 emails, 50 products listed. I didn't know that. I treated my early results as meaningful feedback, which meant I was constantly either overconfident or underconfident based on whatever happened last. The antidote is simple but uncomfortable. Decide in advance how many attempts you're committing to before you evaluate, and then try not to evaluate too early. There is a specific kind of damage that comes from watching too many people who are further along than you. Not the inspirational kind of further along, the kind where someone is 18 months ahead of you, showing their results to you, and your brain starts using their month 18 maybe as the benchmark for your month 2. So I did this constantly. I would watch someone's income report or their subscriber count and feel a specific, discouragement. And not even because I was doing badly, but because I was comparing my internal experience to their external results. They weren't showing me month 2. They were showing me month maybe 18. So the solution I eventually found was simple. Curate ruthlessly. Unfollow anyone whose content consistently makes you feel behind rather than informed. This sounds obvious, but it took me much longer than it should have to actually do it. Your comparison set should be people at your stage or people far enough ahead that the comparison doesn't feel personal. The danger zone is the person who's close enough to feel reachable, but far enough to feel discouraging. So this is the one that cost me the most time to learn, so I'll say it as directly as I can. A decent product with great distribution will always outperform a great product with no distribution. So distribution means, how does your thing find the people it's meant for? So in practice, online it means, do you have an audience, a platform, a channel through which people discover you? Without that, nothing really matters. But I used to spend most of my energy on the product, refining it, improving it, trying to make it perfect, and almost none of my energy on the question of how anyone would ever find it. I thought the quality would speak for itself, but it doesn't. Discoverability, that's where the game is at. So that's why building an audience before a product makes more sense than most people realize. The audience is the distribution. Everything you sell into it is easier than everything you'd sell without it. Build the channel before the course. Build a list before the product. So yeah, basically, build the audience before you have anything to sell them. And there's a concept, an idea when you start making things. Your taste is already developed, but your ability hasn't caught up yet. Like, you know what good looks like, and you can see the gap between what you're making and what you want to be making. And that gap, that could be discouraging because you're failing. You feel like you're failing. So what I didn't understand early on is that type of a gap, it's not a sign that I'm wrong for the work. It's a sign that my taste is working correctly. It's a proof that I actually have standards, that I want to do better. But the only way to close that gap is volume, making more things, getting more experience doing those things. So the people who get good are almost always just the people who stayed long enough for their output to catch up to their taste. That's the whole secret. There's no shortcut to it. So if you're someone who's making things and they're not as good as you want them to be, that's not a problem. That's just where you are right now, and you just have to keep going. Now, the last one is about consistency. Consistency, it's not actually a personality trait. It is not something you either have or don't have. It's more of a systems problem. So people who produce consistently, maybe every week, then they maintain their output for months or years, they're not more disciplined than you. They just have removed more decisions from the path between like intention, like planning, and taking action. They have made the default behavior the one they want. So when I failed to show up consistently, it was never because I lacked discipline in some deep personal sense. It was because I had designed a workflow that required maximum willpower at every step. Really, the barrier was too high. I was relying on motivation to do the work that I could have just used systems for. Now, the practical version of this. Every hour spent designing your workflow, your environment, is worth more than 10 hours of forcing yourself through friction. If you reduce the friction, then you don't need the willpower. Now, here's the only thing I'd ask you to do with this. Of those lessons, first results are noise, comparison kills projects, distribution over product, taste outruns output, and consistency is a system. Pick the one that stings most. The one that maybe sounds uncomfortably familiar. Now that's the one that's currently costing you something. Not the most interesting one, or the one that's easiest to act on. The one that made you slightly uncomfortable when you hear it. Now write it down, just with one sentence, what it means specifically for whatever you're building or thinking about building right now. Now that's it. That's the homework for you. Just one sentence. Did any of this speak to you and maybe your current project? So yeah, these are the things I actually wish I'd known, not things that sound wise in retrospect and were obvious at the time. And if any of this was useful, or if there's something you would add, maybe something you learned, I would really like to hear it. You can leave a comment. And the next video is going to be a bit more tactical, but we will see that in the next video. Okay, bye.